person. Thank you for your patience as we have navigated the COVID situation and tried to make the best decision to keep people safe. We are happy to return to our hybrid council meeting, which we plan to continue with as long as it is safe. If you are here, join us on site. The council is following CDC guidelines and taking precautions to reduce the transmission of COVID-19 and maintain healthy business operations and work environments. Also, per the mayor's executive order, masks and face coverings are required while in city facilities, even if vaccinated. We ask everyone to please keep your face coverings on at all times during the meetings. For people who are signed up for the public comments, feel free to remove your mask after your name has been called and that you are at the microphone to address the council. Our staff members are also helping with seating and spacing so that we can maintain social distancing. Thank you. Move on to item number 2 is the Pledge of Allegiance. So request everybody to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Liberty and justice.
So item number 3, welcome and the public meeting rules. Welcome to everyone who is joining us tonight. If you're joining us for the public comment opportunities later on the agenda, we are accepting your comments in person and also through WebEx. And for those whose only option is to call in, staff will be monitoring a separate telephone line. Before we begin moving through our agenda, I want to mention and review our rules of decorum. These are guidelines that the City Council has always had in place to help our meetings progress in an orderly, civil, efficient way so that everyone has the opportunity to voice their opinions without feeling intimidated. In order to achieve this, our rules of decorum begin from the moment you arrive in person or into our virtual meeting. We respect all points of view and we welcome new insights. While giving your comments, please be respectful, avoid yelling, profanity, or making racial slurs, obscene or defamatory remarks. If you violate this rule, your line will be muted or you will be asked to stop. If you feel that need to use profanity or disrespectful remarks to express your opinion, you're welcome to email council members or call our comment line. In addition, our staff will request your name during the WebEx registration process. To limit disruptions, your name cannot include a message or violate our rules of decorum. If your name doesn't meet this requirement, then our staff will make contact with you to gather this information from you. For those joining in WebEx, please monitor your chat in case we try to reach you. Delaney Silman from our staff is helping to moderate the WebEx portion of our meeting and will be messaging with the attendees to coordinate on any questions with your registration. Staff is handling a number of tasks. Please limit messages to technical issues and minimal changes to your registration. If you would like to send any comment, please feel free to mail us at P.O. Box 145-476, Salt Lake City, Utah, 84114. Email us at council.comments@slcgov.com or call us at 801-535-7654. This brings us to item A4. The council will approve the work session meeting minutes of March 3rd, 2021, April 6th, 2021, January 4th, 2022, January 11th, 2022, and February 1st, 2022, as well as a formal meeting minutes of April 20th, 2021, June 8th, 2021, August 17th, 2021, and January 18th, 2022, as well as the minutes for the January 3rd, 2022 oath of office ceremony and the January 25th, 2022 council retreat. I look for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Ward and a second from Councilmember Fowler. Is there any discussion?
No.
I will roll call this. Councilmember Fowler.
Yes.
Councilmember Pugh.
Yes.
Sorry. Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Romano.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Pietrastra.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That passes unanimously. Apologize. We are now to item A5. the council will consider adopting a joint ceremony resolution with Mayor Mendenhall recognizing February as Black History Month in Salt Lake City. I will now read the resolution. The Salt Lake City Corporation Resolution, joint resolution recognizing February as Black History Month in Salt Lake City. Whereas Black History Month is a time to celebrate the far-reaching contributions made by Black Americans throughout our country's history and have shaped our nation and our city for the better. And whereas the origins of Black History Month can be traced back to 1926 when Dr. Carter G. Woodson and the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, which he co-founded, declared the second week of February Negro History Week. And whereas expounding upon the work of Dr. Carter G. Woodson, Black History Month was first proposed by Black educators, students, and the Black United Students Group of Kent State University in 1969. In 1970, the first celebration of Black History Month took place at Kent State, and 6 years later, in 1976, was recognized by President Gerald Ford, urging Americans to honor the too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans in every area of endeavor throughout our history. And whereas contributions by Black Americans have influenced all facets of society, from culture to religion, from education to business and public service, and more. And whereas it is our honor to acknowledge and celebrate the heritage, perseverance, and achievements of Black Americans in our nation's history, we acknowledge your struggle as an American struggle and at its core reflects upon our society. And whereas while we celebrate and recognize Black leaders, inventors, artists, musicians, and creators on a national level, such as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, George Washington Carver, Jackie Robinson, Billie Holiday, and many more, we also acknowledge those locally who have contributed to the rich history of our community in Salt Lake City and Utah. And whereas in Salt Lake City and Utah, we have many heroes to look up to and learn from trailblazers of the past like Shirley and Carl Kinsey and Betty Gillespie, to advocates of today, such as Reverend Francis Davis, civil rights activist and emeritus pastor of Calvary Baptist Church, retired, Jeanette Williams, president of SLC and United NAACP, and Representative Sandra Hollins, first Black woman elected to serve in the Utah State Legislature, as well as the luminaries of the future. And now, therefore, be it resolved that Salt Lake City recognizes the month of February as Black History Month and the importance of Black History Month as an opportunity to reflect on the complex history of the United States while remaining hopeful and confident about the path ahead. Be it further resolved that the Salt Lake City Council and Mayor of Salt Lake City remain dedicated to dismantling racial inequality while advancing equity and justice to all. Be it further resolved that Salt Lake City is committed to continuing the progress made throughout Black history, but also to ensure the positive Black future. We create history every day, and if we work together to make our today better than yesterday, our tomorrow will only be that much brighter. Be it further resolved, the theme for Black History Month 2022 is Black History and Wellness. We have the opportunity and responsibility today to not only reflect on the obstacles overcome, but to also make the present a time where Black Americans continue to excel and thrive.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we adopt this resolution.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Fowler, a second from Councilmember Wharton. Any discussion on this item? I will roll call the Councilmember Petro Estler,
Yes.
Councilmember Bolamoros,
Yes.
Councilmember Mono,
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton,
Yes.
Councilmember Pui,
Yes.
Councilmember Fowler,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. I noticed that Reverend Davis was on the call earlier. Reverend Davis, would you be
I'm
grateful?
still here.
Yes, would you be so grateful to say something if you want to.
Well, it's certainly my privilege and pleasure to meet with the council, Mr. Chair, and with the mayor and all of the council members. And I want to say a special thanks for the resolution and for the acknowledgement of Black History Month. Our goal is to have Black history integrated in the curriculums and the regular processes of daily work and schooling throughout the state. And while we currently have 1 month, we would certainly be delighted to have it integrated all year. So thank you again, and it's our privilege, and we look forward to continuing to work with you as a council.
Thank you,
Thank
Reverend
you.
Thank you, and thank you, Reverend Davis, and thank you for all your years of service and work with the city and this council. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
I also noticed that Jeanette Williams is also on the call,
Yes,
and I turn the
am.
time over to you, ma'am.
Yes, I am. Thank you so much to the city council, the mayor, and everyone. And thank you, Pastor Davis, for your remarks as well. The NAACP celebrated 113 years in existence on Saturday, February 12th. And as we all know, our struggles continue. And as we approach a new year in 2022, we still have a lot of work to do. And we sincerely, again, appreciate the recognition of this proclamation. And our executive committee also earlier said and asked if I would thank you on their behalf. Thank you so much.
Thank you also for all your dedication and your work with the city council and the city on moving forward with all the work we have ahead of us. So thank you again for your work.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Mr. Chair. So I wanted to also, mention that my community, all the refugees and the immigrants, Black immigrants and refugees that are joining, and they live in many parts of the west side of Salt Lake City and throughout. And this is also a celebration of their history and what they bring to the table and what they make this country better because of their presence. So I wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to item B, our public hearing. Now we begin our public hearings. Taylor Hill on our staff will be calling the names of those who wish to comment. I think I've skipped, did I skip something here? I apologize, Salt Lake City. I didn't staple my pages here. Taylor Hill and our staff will be calling the names of those who wish to comment. We will call names of people joining on WebEx and in person based on the order of registration or received comment cards. Once we open public comments, Taylor will announce 3 names at a time so that people can have some notice and be prepared to speak. When it is your turn to speak, Taylor will announce your name. For people in the WebEx, you will unmute your line and you may begin. For people in person, please step up to the podium. Feel free to remove your mask to make your comments in the microphone. Once you begin, please state your name and the 2-minute timer will start. At the 2-minute mark, the staff will announce time. If you are unable to finish your comments, please send the rest of your comments via email or mailing or calling our office. Our contact information is posted in the meeting room or in the WebEx chat. If you join us virtually but do not wish to speak, please either message our staff, or when our staff states your name, please let them know that you're here to listen. Our first public hearing is regarding the ordinance of budget amendment number 6 for fiscal year 21 to 2022. And before we take the public comments, I will first turn the time over to Ben Lutke, council staff, to give a short introduction. Ben, it's yours.
There are 37 items in budget amendment number 6. They total $23 million. The 2 largest items are $7 million for a state infrastructure bank loan and $5.8 million in new federal funding for emergency rental assistance. Any renters in the city can apply for that funding at rentrelief.utah.gov. There are also 5 items requesting a total of 16 new full-time employees. The administration's proposal, the council staff report, and all of the related documents are in today's meeting packet. The council has a dedicated budget webpage at tinyurl.com/SLC FY22 budget. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
And thank you, Ben. I open it up to public comments.
Thank you, Council Chair. It looks like there is no one here to speak to this item tonight.
Thank you very much. So I will look for a motion.
And the motion that you're looking for is to continue the hearing,
I look for, yes.
is that right? Is that?
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing to a future date.
I have a motion to move the public hearing to a future date.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Mono, a second from Councilmember Fowler. Councilmember Fowler? Roll call. Any discussion? Excuse me.
Yes.
Councilmember Pui?
Can we, what am I, sorry, I was talking.
Okay.
I was trying to find the motion sheet. I have a reason for not paying attention. I wasn't just,
That's quite all right. Councilmember Mono will repeat his motion.
Thank you.
So the motion is to continue the public hearing to a future date, meaning that we will accept public comment again. And I believe the reason is because there are still some things that we want to discuss, and we still want public comment again.
Councilmember Fowler? I said yes. So I have a motion from Councilmember Mono, a second from Councilmember Fowler. There is no discussion. Councilmember Fowler?
Yes.
Councilmember Pui?
Yes, now yes.
Councilmember Wharton?
Yes.
Councilmember Mono?
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemorse?
Yes.
Councilmember Pietrastra?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That passes unanimously. We will now move on to an ordinance rezoning the master plan amendment for the former fire station's number 3 property. And I have Brian Fulmer to give us a short introduction.
This is a proposal to rezone redevelopment agency owned properties at 1085, 1095, 1097 East Simpson Avenue and 1104 East Sugarmont Drive from public lands to the Sugar House Business District zoning designation and to amend the Sugar House Community Plan future land use map. The proposal is to consolidate the subject parcels with property to the east for future development. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Brian. And I open it up to public comments.
Thank you, Council Chair. It looks like there is no one here to speak to this item.
Thank you. I will look for a motion.
I move that we close the public hearing and defer action to a future council date.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Fowler, a second from Councilmember Valamoros. Any discussion on this item? I will roll call this. Councilmember Pietrastra?
Yes.
Councilmember Valamoros?
Yes.
Councilmember Mono?
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton?
Yes.
Councilmember Pui?
Yes.
Councilmember Fowler?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That passes unanimously. We will now move on to item B3, ordinance rezone at 1193 West California Avenue. And I should have a short introduction from Brian Fulmer.
This is a proposal to amend the zoning designation for the subject property from R1 7000 to R1 5000. If approved, the applicant stated they would like to remove the existing structure and build 2 houses, potentially with ADUs. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Brian. And Taylor?
Council Chair, there is no one here to speak to this item.
Thank you. I will look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, this is, regardless, I forgot what. I move to close the public hearing and defer action to a later date.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilman.
Thanks
Any
for letting me talk through my feelings on that.
Any discussion?
That's where we're at.
No discussions. I will roll call this. Councilman Romano?
Yes.
Councilmember Valamoros?
Yes.
Councilmember Peter Esther?
Yes.
Councilmember Fowler?
Yes.
Councilmember Pui?
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That passes unanimously. Item B4, rezone at 2060 North, 2200 West. And I will turn the time over to Brian again for a short introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a proposal to change the zoning designation of the property from agriculture AG2 to light manufacturing, which is M1. The surrounding horseshoe-shaped parcel was rezoned from AG2 to M1 in May 2021. The applicant owns both parcels. Nearly all parcels on 2200 West between 2100 North and North Temple are zoned M1. This is my introduction.
Thank you, Brian. Taylor?
Council Chair, we do not have anyone here to speak to this item.
All right, thank you. I will look for a motion.
Chairman, I move that the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Peter Essler, a second from Councilmember Wharton. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I will roll call this. Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Pui.
Yes.
Councilmember Fowler.
Yes.
Councilmember Malno.
Yes.
Councilmember Valamoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Peter Esther.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That passes unanimously. We are now moving on to item C, which is potential action items. We are at a potential action item number C1. This item was scheduled last fall, and that the council took action on most of the budget amendment items, but one was left open until additional information was available. So we will take action now on this item regarding the ordinance of budget amendment number 4 for fiscal year 2021 to 22. I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move, since we've already had all the public hearings on this, I move that we adopt the remainder of budget amendment number 4 for the fiscal year 2020-2022.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Wait,
Any discussion?
Mr. Chair,
I don't think we're,
Go ahead, Ben.
it may be helpful to clarify that the only item being adopted is the one listed on the motion sheet. I think the wording of the motion could imply additional items were being adopted, and I don't think that's the council's intent tonight.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to
I don't see
find
the
the
motion
motion
sheet.
sheet.
It's not,
There's no
can you
motion sheet.
post the motion sheet?
So that's why, yeah, I did the best I could without my motion sheet.
This is the reason I was lost a few minutes ago. Putting it on the record on the minutes.
And Taylor, could we blow that up so we could read it? Expand it.
Much bigger, Taylor.
Taylor, just the print size was a little too small.
Ben, perhaps you could read that to us.
So motion one is I move that the council adopt an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2021-22 final budget of Salt Lake City only for the item as shown on the motion sheet. And below that, it's item E2, and it's $301,000 from ARPA for a lease payment for the winter overflow shelter.
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Fowler, a second from Councilmember Wharton. Any discussion of this item? I will roll call this item. Councilmember Fowler?
Yes.
Councilmember Pui?
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton?
Yes.
Councilmember Morno?
Yes.
Councilmember Bella-Morris?
No.
Councilmember Peter Estra?
No.
And I'm a yes. That passes 5-2. We'll move on to item number D1. Council members, do you have any questions for the mayor? Thank you, Mayor, for your engagement, and it's great to see you in person. We will now move on to item D2, which is our general comment period. We are now at the general comment portion of our agenda for comments about general topics and items that were not scheduled for a hearing tonight. I went over the City Council's rules of decorum earlier, and those rules apply here as well. We are accepting your comments in person and through WebEx for those joining virtually, and for those who are only option to call in, staff is monitoring a separate telephone line. Delaney Silman from our staff is still helping to moderate the meeting and can message with attendees if the need to coordinate. Taylor Hill and our staff will be calling the names of those who wish to comment. We will call names of people joining on WebEx and in person based on the order of registration or received comment cards. Once we open the public comment, Taylor will announce 3 names at a time so that people can have some notice and be prepared to speak. When it's your turn to speak, Taylor will announce your names. For people on WebEx, she will unmute your line and you may begin. For people in person, please step up to the podium. Feel free to remove your mask to make your comments in the microphone. Once you begin, please state your name and the 2-minute timer will start. At the 2-minute mark, the host will announce time and your microphone will be muted. If you're unable to finish your comments, please send the rest of your comments via email, mail, or calling our office. Our contact information is posted in the meeting room or in the WebEx chat. If you're joining virtually and do not wish to speak, please either message our staff or when the host states your name, please let us know you are here to listen. Taylor, you can begin with our first general comment.
Thank you, Council Chair. It looks like there are 7 people here to speak for general comment. The first will be Keiko Jones, followed by Debbie Mayo, and then Wendy Garvin. Keiko, you're now unmuted.
Thank you, Taylor. My name is Keiko, and I live on the west side. Regarding rezoning, I am in general opposed to rezoning one property at a time, just as it happened to Hoyt Place last year. It's usually done to accommodate higher density. And if one property is allowed, it can only spread one by one. We need to look at the big picture, not just one by one. And we may need more housing, but what we need is foresight and not reaction. And I am grateful that Mayor is keeping her promise to plant more trees on the west side to give us better air to breathe, to get some relief from the heat of the sun, and green is easy on your eyes too. But in the meantime, along TSA zone, we are getting square high-density apartments without enough parking or green space. Built right up to the property lines, it seems counterintuitive. In my opinion, those studio apartments without parking or green space are a product of greed. They are not for families. We should create an environment where the residents can raise a family. If you don't own a home by now, where could you have a place to call home in this city? City council members, I really want to encourage you to put a moratorium or at least slow down on all the development of new multi-level apartments and to come up with better plans before it's too late. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next we will hear from Debbie Mayo, followed by Wendy Garvin, and then Denise Weaver. Debbie, you're now unmuted.
Hi, I was originally going to comment on an agenda item that is now going to be referred back to the Planning Commission. So I guess I will just say thank you for your decision at the working session this afternoon for referring this matter back to Planning Commission. This was in regards to the rezoning of the 1583 East Stratford Avenue property. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
All right, and next we will hear from Wendy Garvin, followed by Denise Weaver, and then Kelly Lake. Wendy, you're now unmuted.
Hi, council members. Thanks for having us here tonight. I'll be beginning a statement from several people to share the story that I'd like to tell. Thank you, friends. As a collaborative effort, many of us volunteer our time to help the unsheltered population in Salt Lake City survive the extremely cold weather, starvation, and brutal abuse by law enforcement they encounter every day. We're here to speak on funding the Ramada High Needs Shelter, speak to the horrific inadequacy of the winter shelter this year, and ask for your support to prevent these humanitarian abuses from ever happening again. Salt Lake City provides a brutal environment to live in if you are homeless. There are not enough permanent shelters. The shelters that exist have extremely high barriers and require unreasonable personal sacrifice to simply survive. Some of the shelters require people to leave their life partners or adult children. Some shelters don't allow pets. Many highly advertised shelters don't actually provide what they claim. The overflow shelters that are available this winter include the three following options. You can stay on a mat on the ground at Catholic Community Services. You must arrive before 8, and police can run you off for sitting outside the buildings so you can't form a line to receive services. You can stay on a mat on the ground at the Wiggin Center. This opens at the incredibly convenient hour of 11 p.m. Many clients have tried to get into other shelters and are therefore 10 or 15 miles away at the time that this shelter opens. Once both of these options have filled up, starting tonight at the convenient time of mid-February, you will be taken on a van to the Ramada, where the Overflow shelter has opened there, and you'll be given a mat on the ground in a conference room. None of these options promise you a bed the next day. None provide storage for your survival equipment, so if you get a mat one night, your tent and sleeping bag will certainly be stolen. You are not guaranteed a mat the next night. Since our friends that live outside are not stupid, they don't choose these options unless it's raining or so cold their lives are in danger. What is needed is non-congregate shelters like Airport Inn last year, or like they build the Ramada this year. What actually happened at the Ramada is that the service providers stopped using hotel vouchers and brought all their high needs clients to the Ramada. These clients need hotel rooms most, which is why they were in hotel rooms before the Ramada opened. They're in wheelchairs, on oxygen, and otherwise unable to survive outside. We support the Ramada because these clients obviously need a place to stay. In fact, it's a disgusting tragedy that...
That's time.
And next we will hear from Denise Weaver, followed by Kelly Lake, and then Lonnie Newby. Denise, you're now unmuted.
Thank you so much. I'm going to be finishing up the statement that Wendy was not able to finish. So, in fact, it's a disgusting tragedy that 70-year-old men and women aren't in adequate hospice settings. The frustrating thing is that these clients were not as advertised, brought from the congregate shelters, freeing up space. They were brought out of expensive hotel rooms to save budget. We cannot blame the service providers, but this did not open up more overall beds in the system. So as a council, I would be very concerned. The mayor's office is now telling you there are enough beds in the system. because they're counting the warming overflow beds as real shelter when it is clearly not adequate. We support the Ramada. That money is needed, and these clients need this facility. Unfortunately, this did not get people off of the streets. Let us talk about adequate shelter. Rapes and assaults are common in and around the shelter. This has to be taken into account. People must go outside at some point, and security only protects the immediate building. This fact is given so that we can define what adequate shelter should look like. We determine adequate shelter by whether or not people are willing to stay in it. What is the point of a shelter that is so terribly designed that its clients won't use the service? If it requires giving up a pet or leaving a vulnerable family member 10 miles away unprotected, or giving up your survival equipment, would you, Councilmember Wharton, would you leave your partner and your beloved pet? I don't believe you would. Would you, Councilmember Mano, would you leave your partner and vulnerable children in a Midvale shelter while you were 15 miles away in the men's shelter? You would not make these sacrifices, and nor should we require them simply because someone has fallen onto tough times. We deem the current shelter system wholly inadequate.
Thank you.
Now we will hear from Kelly Lake, followed by Lonnie Newby, and then Cindy Cromer. Kelly, you are unmuted.
Thank you, council members, and hello, friends. Some of you are familiar to me, and I'm familiar to you. I'm continuing with this same statement. I'm coming at it with a little bit of a twist. I'm a business owner who has businesses adjacent to one of the resource centers on 3rd West. Councilmember Mano and I have visited regarding this. So please bear my point of view in mind. I'm a business owner who has been tremendously impacted, and yet I am speaking with one voice with these other people concerning the Ramada Inn. What we want, what we all humans should want, is adequate shelter. We need multiple new shelters right now. People are not adequately being counted because they are quadrupling up in hotel rooms. They are hiding out in friends' apartments, couch surfing, until they get kicked out due to strict housing rules. And they're hiding throughout the system in Palmer Court, in Alliance House, but each of these options have rules and are temporary. So we need multiple new shelters. We need these shelters to be non-congregate living. We need shelters that are designed not for a couple of days, not for a natural disaster such as an earthquake or a tornado. They were not designed to be what they have become now. Do you know that it takes longer than a year for most people to get housed? We were speaking to a young woman who's been waiting for 2 years to be housed. On a personal note, I have a street granddaughter, basically an adopted grandchild, who's been in the Midvale shelter with her 62-year-old father since birth. She is 10 months old. She has a housing voucher. They cannot be housed. Do you consider that an adequate or humane process, council members?
Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Lonnie Newby, followed by Cindy Cromer. Lonnie, you're now unmuted.
Hi, thank you so much for hearing from me. I will be continuing that speech as well. All park residents. Did you know that the reason these folks have been outside for so long is because it's
Taylor, we're having a hard time hearing her.
Lonnie, I am going to mute you and then troubleshoot, and then we will come back to you. We're going to move on to Cindy Cromer. Cindy, you are unmuted.
Hi, everybody. I listened this afternoon to your presentation on Pioneer Park, and I'd like to comment on that. There's no question that Pioneer Park holds a unique place in the city's oldest park and the largest green public space downtown. I have watched over the past 35 years, ever since the redevelopment of Block 57, now known as the Gallivan Plaza, how we deal with our precious park spaces in highly urbanized parts of the city. You may not know that the initial award-winning design for Gallivan was a lush emerald island of trees designed by Ray Kingston of FFKR. That design was abandoned for what became Grandma's Attic, a cluttered space which has since been decluttered a bit, but certainly not enough to leave the impression of anything but hardscaping. You may not know about the previous plans for Pioneer Park, which were fortunately abandoned. The most ludicrous was to put the Living Planet Aquarium there in an effort to get it in Salt Lake City. Then there was the waterfall, which would have been a screen on which to project entertainment in the second driest state in the country. I went toe-to-toe with the planning director about that bad idea. It certainly had its supporters, including a member of the city council. And the recent bad idea, which was executed in Pioneer Park, created a playing field by removing over 50 trees planted in the 1980s, and is an example of waste that I just find intolerable. Over 50 trees, over 35 years old, and we changed our minds. We cannot afford to change our minds regarding the precious dollars invested in our open spaces, especially when those open spaces are historic ones. Thanks to each of you who raised the issue of context this afternoon. What are the needs for park spaces in other parts of the city which are so rapidly becoming more densely populated? And what are the costs associated with new parks where there has been no previous public investment in them as open spaces, such as Allen Park and the Fleet Block? Good questions to ask, and thank you very much for doing so.
Time.
Thank you.
And we will return to Lonnie Newby once more. Lonnie, you are unmuted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Ballpark residents, did you know that the reason these folks have been outside for so long is because it takes often 2 years to get housed? Do you consider that an adequate process? Would you be willing to stay away from your partner for 2 full years to receive that housing? The Ramada was supposed to be exactly this: non-congregate shelter for those with pets, for couples, and families with adult children. Instead, it was used to cut costs by service providers. Remember that when you vote on spending more, we do not support a shell game of moving people around at the expense of the state and the city. What we do support is at least 3 more shelters built like the Ramada. People who wish to stay together as a couple should not have to be separated. People with pets should never have to give them up. Forcing these awful choices is part of what makes this a humanitarian crisis. We applaud the council for pushing for deeply affordable housing. I applaud the council for supporting the Ramada. We implore you to open your eyes to what's really going on. I expect you to set standards on the money that you give and expect results. What is your criteria for an adequate shelter? What is your criteria for an adequate service provider? And how long is reasonable to expect people to wait for housing in these shelters? What are the reports you receive, and have you asked why our numbers are so different from yours? The answer is that they take someone who comes to the shelter for a night and is absolutely appalled and gets their own situation sorted out as their success. And then they can bring the average down from a year, which is the actual number, to 30 days by including people who are facing a temporary crisis. We expect the council to demand real solutions. Is a sanctioned camping an option? If so, let's put it on the agenda and vote on it.
Time.
If not, conversation can't.
Lonnie, thank you for your comments. If you can also submit that written to the council if you so desire.
And that was our final comment this evening.
Thank you, Taylor, and thank you to all the commenters. We always appreciate engagement, and we always appreciate your comments because it does keep our minds open and keep our minds thinking about different ways to solve our problems. So I appreciate that. We will now move on to new business, and we have none. So item F, unfinished business. There's an ordinance accessibility and disability Commission.
Mr. Chair? Were you ready?
Yes. No.
Sorry. I move that the council adopt the ordinance changes needed to formalize the Accessibility and Disability Commission as one of the city's permanent boards and commissions.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Fowler, a second from Councilmember Mono. Any discussion? I will roll call this. Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemores.
Yes.
Councilmember Peter Essler.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Pui.
Yes.
Councilmember Fowler.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That passes unanimously. We'll now move on to our consent agenda. I think on our consent agenda, we did remove one item on that consent agenda because we didn't discuss it. But I'm looking at it.
Item was the rezoning and Sugar House, because you send it back to the planning commission.
Mr. Chair, I would move to adopt the consent agenda minus item number 2.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Fowler, second from Councilmember Wharton. Any discussion on this item? No, see no discussions.
Yes.
Oh,
Do I
do you have to recuse?
recuse myself from the consent agenda?
Yeah.
Yes.
You can vote separately.
Or did?
But we removed the item that
We skipped this item. We're not voting on that item.
Okay.
the item that you recused yourself on got
Is being removed. Okay. So I'm
being
okay to
removed
just
from
vote
consent. So you
on the
can
motion
still-
as is.
Right, because it's the rest of the items.
Okay. Thanks.
So Councilmember Mono,
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemores,
Yes.
Councilmember Peter Essler,
Yes.
Councilmember Fowler,
Yes.
Councilmember Pui,
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
I'm a yes, that passes unanimously. And moving, that's the consent agenda. And item H is adjournment. Before we adjourn, Cindy, is there any, we're good? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.